It is just 6 o'clock, so we did it just on time. First order of business is the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you all. Board member roll call. Mr. Jensen let me know that he was going to be unable to attend tonight. He has some pressing work business. And then I think we have both Eileen and Kaylor online. Is that correct? Yep. All right, great. So, all but one. Are there any additional agenda items for the evening?
Mr. Chair, I would love to come back to the climate surveys. I know we're getting a report on them, but I left with some questions after our last meeting.
Okay, would it be enough to discuss it during the,
That works great for me.
superintendent's report?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Y'all can hear me, can't you? I don't need to, all right. Any other? Oh. There we go. Okay. Any other agenda items? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to see a motion for the adoption of the agenda. So moved. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, I need to get a motion to approve the minutes of May 20th. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on those? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Harris, recognitions.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, a couple of exciting things here as the year wrapped up. Of course, we do our Teacher of the Year nomination process at each of the schools. So I wanted to share the teachers who were nominated and chosen by their respective schools. At Gannett Peak, we have Rachel Roberts, who's a behavior resource teacher. At Baldwin Creek Elementary, Tammy Linton, who teaches 4th grade math and science. At Lander Middle School, Alana McGilvray, who does 7th grade mathematics. At LVHS, Kylie Chatfield, who's a voc ed teacher, he teaches woods. And then at Pathfinder High School, Buddy Redbow, our PE teacher. So those 5 teachers are in the process of being selected. One will be selected as the District Teacher of the Year, and then that District Teacher of the Year applies as our representative for the state recognition as Teacher of the Year for the whole state. So that will wrap up soon. So all of those applicants are well deserving of their recognition. Any of them would make a fine District Teacher of the Year. The way the process works, our district central office administrators review their application materials. We each rank them independently, and then the one with the highest score is the one chosen as the District Teacher of the Year. Any questions on that?
No, congrats to all 5 of those folks.
Yeah. And then the second item is the Wyoming Believing in Literacy Together grant. We had a 5-year grant with the Wyoming Department of Education to improve literacy throughout the district from preschool all the way up through high school. And this month marks the wrap up of that grant. It's the 5-year point, so we have closed out our grant, but before we leave that topic, I wanted to invite Deidre to talk a little bit about the grant's objectives and how we fared in those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board, I have a board to show you.
Okay.
I was just at the Embracing Literacy Conference, was that last week?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember, I just gained the week this month, so I looked at my calendar, I was pretty excited. But I got to share this, those of us that received that grant years ago, they had this a poster up for each of the districts, and with a gift underneath that I'll share with the Guiding Coalition. And you can see on here, this is the Guiding Coalition plus some others. We've had a strong, solid team the entire time we've had the grant. And it was a celebration for us because some of the districts haven't even started coalitions yet. Thanks to this Guiding Coalition, our work pre-K-12 has really been solid and strong, and that's very good because literacy is,
Just show them the deal real quick. I'm sure you can see it and read every word.
yeah, you can read everything. I'll leave it up in the board because there's a good picture of Mike on it. When he was reading as a Frozen character in our family literacy night. But there won't be funds, as we know, in the near future for literacy, even with the K-3 statute and expectations and pre-K-12 expectations for strong literacy instruction. So this is the team that's going to guide us as we continue to move forward, because we're focusing not only on the science of reading, but the science of writing, and ultimately the science of learning with all content. So that's where we're moving, but I wanted to let you know that they asked what we are really celebrating besides scores and growth with kids. And it is reduction in tier 2 and tier 3 intervention needs through strengthened early literacy practices, establishment of sustainable district literacy and MTSS coalition, which is our group here, to evaluate pre-K-12 data and implement actionable items. So each time we meet, and Sarah's come to a couple of those. We also now have it open every other month for community members to come to hear those actionable items being put into place. Development of district-wide common knowledge and disciplinary literacy. And that's happening different ways in different schools, so it'll be fun to share that with you guys as we progress. And increasing the number of letters trained staff, which is a science of reading practices, evidence-based. And we have, at this point, certified and classified roughly 80 teachers trained. And I got through the grant 3 people in our district trained, and they trained another 18 just this last year. So we're gonna continue the training that way. I just have to make sure I get funding somehow, but make sure that occurs. Just wanted to support all their hard work, so.
Well, that was gonna be my question, is what impact is losing this particular grant have on this one?
Major. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, it was, it's actually, the grant ends for all districts the end of September. I was one of the initial grant recipients. It's up to 28 districts now, because some took smaller chunks. We had almost $700,000, if I remember, $6,000, and it's put into place the letters training. It's bought incredibly evidence-based resources. It's paid stipend after stipend for PD, professional development for our staff. The impact is going to be sustaining some of these things that are hard to purchase, like the K-3 reading program we purchased is at least $13,000 a year for just that one resource. And as the curriculum budget, is saying when it gets smaller, it's because there's 9 other contents that budget pays for. So this really supplemented all that work. But this team and new folks and building leaders are very, very dedicated to ensuring that we keep moving forward. We made some changes with Title I because we lost 90+ thousand in Title I funds, and you're aware of that. But our MTSS coordinators will take on big chunks of this work as well.
Were there any FTEs that were directly supported by this grant?
Yeah, they were a year in one school and a year in another. So I had a reading interventionist out of this at Baldwin for 1 year. And then this last year we had an MTSS coordinator at middle school. But we have moved her into the title position. She'll do title and MTSS. And that'll be out of title funds this year. So that was one way we could keep that. And that former Title I reading teacher went into 8th grade English. So that worked out. That was
Great.
But yeah, most of it was resources and training, and that's the question.
Other questions? Anyone?
I was just gonna add, we've had some tremendous results with that first bullet in particular, reducing the need for intervention, through higher quality general classroom instruction. And some data that came my way at the end of the school year was in kindergarten with phonics, the phonics skills that we had phonics test and screener that we gave to all the kids. 97% of our kindergartners were able to show proficiency on that, those early phonics skills. And then in first grade, with sight words, the ones that are not encodable, they don't fit a recognizable pattern, you just have to memorize them. 87% 87% of our first graders had proficiency on all of those sight words. So with that foundation, that's gonna pay huge dividends as kids go through the program, or not through the program, but through the grade levels in every content area. If they can just acquire information through reading, it's just gonna be that much easier for them to get to the tougher content, to do more high quality work. So I'm really excited about it. We'll leverage the folks that are letters trained, and the rest of the members of that coalition there. That's gonna be on them and on Deidre and I and our admin team to carry that forward without the grant dollars. But it's a really high priority because literacy and language skills are infused in everything that we do in school. So that's like really the key to unlocking performance in whatever content area we're discussing.
And the science behind it is just that we have the word recognition, but the language development and the exposure to knowledge, just knowledge in general, is going to increase students' growth. So just rich classrooms, rich knowledge experiences. We're gonna get there, we won't quit.
Awesome.
Pretty good.
I have no comment on that.
Yeah, they're a tough group, so they keep me on my toes. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
I'll leave this here and you can. Thank you.
Commissioners?
That was all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there, so going to public comment, is there any public comment on topics that are not on the agenda? Yes, Sarah?
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah Reyes. I wasn't actually gonna speak until, Deidre gave her presentation, and I just kind of wanted to say thank you, to Deidre and to the district for opening up so much of that for the community. I wish more community members had taken advantage, and I wish I could have come to every, event that was open, because it was really cool to see the things that they're doing, working toward literacy and just to be a part of that, and honestly, it made me really miss being in the classroom. That's all I wanted to say, was thank you guys so much for doing that, it was really cool to be a part of that, and thank you, Deidre, for making people feel welcome.
Other comment that's not on the agenda? Okay, is there any public comment on topics that are on the agenda, so I'll know to stop? Okay. Hearing none, we can continue on. Programs, reports, and presentations, board member reports. Okay.
I had the opportunity to go to Gannett Peak's last day of school and see their outdoor, expo, which was great. They did all kinds of like science, reading, writing. They did little diagrams, I said that wrong, they're not diagrams, they're. Yeah, diagrams. I mean, it's just fun, like, I'm like, the halls were just decorated and the kids were super excited about it. So it was really fun to be at the last day of school and then got to see, Leslie Boxland's, presentation for her, the library read dedicated to her, as well as the great songs that the music teachers rewrote to fit Gannett Peak last day of school. So it was really fun. It was great to be there. And then also attended the staff luncheon the next day, which was nice.
Anything else? Other board member reports? Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
Got my hand raised, but I don't know if you can hear me or see me, so I'll just speak up. Hi guys, sorry I'm not able to be there. Just wanted to tell you guys that I'm seeing end of the school year, as the parents said, the banquet or party at Temple. I think it's really awesome. It's great to go through and see all the different things that they're doing. Recognition of Leslie and all that she's done over the years was amazing. Went to the Baldwin Creek Elementary Awards as well, and that's pretty amazing to see just in all our schools how many awards and things students are earning, how many minutes a year students are reading pages and AR goals. It's just really great to see those celebrations. Graduation was an amazing celebration. I was unfortunately not able to go to Pathfinder, but LBHS, I thought it was a wonderful one. And I also want to thank Mike for the presentation for the staff on the last day of working day for staff. I thought that was a really nice way to end the year with lots of highlights on what the district has been doing and what specifically our teachers have been doing for our students, so kudos to you on that. And then just a quick recap, I was in Powell, Wyoming last week for the State Board of Education retreat, and we have a couple of things that have come about. So in 2019, just a little historical background here, the Attorney General gave a position stating that the State Board of Education hadn't actually identified graduation standards, and that was part of the State Board of Education's roles and duties. And so since that time, we've been revising and looking at our chapters. So previously, there was a chapter 31 that had some standards, but they weren't necessarily, there were two different things. There was chapter 10, which looked at performance standards, and then chapter 31 that looked at graduation requirements. So we spent a couple of years now reviewing those and sending them out to curriculum directors and superintendents and principals, looking at those things. A lot of changes have been made to look at competency-based exams and competency-based assessments, and that has now been approved. We looked at looking at graduation requirements and adding some standards of progressions of learning. So that now has gone out to promulgation, or will be going out, so that will be going out to public input. And so if anyone from our district wants to look into that and put input in it, your input is valuable. We appreciate stakeholders from the state. And then also chapter 4 was previously, which is assessment system. So it was previously lumped in with graduation standards, but the assessments are from K to 12, so it's not really just graduation. So that's been pulled out to be just chapter 4, and so there's new statement of reasoning for that. And again, that would be opened up for public review. So those are just some things that are coming out, and the State Board of Education is hoping that with that being going out in the fall and then having time to prepare and make any adjustments, they're hoping to have those new graduation standards and requirements implemented for the 9th grade class going into the 2027-2028 school year. So this has been a long time coming, and it's crazy how long things take to change, but it's a process, and it seems like that will be a long time away, but I think 2027 will be here before we know it. So, and that's all I got.
It's a great update. Thank you so much for your work on that important board up there. Any others? One thing, just almost a housekeeping thing I wanted to mention. We're having a little bit of trouble with Diligent software in terms of getting the policies over from the old software. So if you're out looking for policies and you need to whatever, look them up, research, whatever, they're still on the old board doc system, which we do have access to. So at least for the time being, that's where they're at. Hopefully, Diligent will get those converted over before we all die or retire, whatever it is that we're going to do. Okay, Becky.
Mr. Chair, all I'm gonna say is I'm glad to be out of school.
Fair enough, good report. Well, we're glad you're out of school too. All right, Mike, superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple things by way of report. First, graduation, of course, huge culminating event for our students. Most of them have been with us more than just high school. Packed house again at LHS, Pathfinder as well, so pretty full house as well. And it's just so fun to be at those ceremonies. And I wish you guys could see, board members, you can see this from the stage, but people in the audience don't often get to see like the kids' faces while you're up there. You're seeing this range of emotions from elation to boredom to fear, it's all over the spectrum, absolutely. But it's just so cool to see our kids reach that milestone and then embark on whatever comes next in their lives. So really, really proud of our staff, but mostly really, really proud of our students for achieving that milestone. The second piece of my report tonight has to do with the CKA rules. So CKA is the district's policy on concealed carry for staff. As you guys know, our statute changed in the state here. So we are in the midst of amending our existing rules on concealed carry for employees. So the 45-day public comment period began on June 4th. You might have noticed the documents online or in the newspaper. No formal comments have been received that I'm aware made some slight adjustments to that based on feedback from our policy subcommittee, which is Jared and Eileen, before those rules went out. So hopefully that rule, reflects our best thinking on the subject while trying to maintain some training requirements, answering some questions about, financial responsibilities and instructor qualifications for those who are providing training to our staff. And just clarifying some of the areas where the statute leaves that up to districts to determine. Last piece on that one is that the school board's vote on those amended rules will take place in July, actually on the 29th of the special board meeting at 6 o'clock on that Tuesday. So that's on the reminders part of the agenda as well, but I wanted to just mention that quickly as well. Moving on to the last item in my report here, the climate survey options and costs, and I shared some information in the agenda about what Wyoming School Boards Association has to offer with regard to climate surveys. Got an answer back from them pretty quickly after inquiring post last meeting. The basic climate survey for staff only costs $3,500 through WSBA. There's some add-ons if you want to add parents and guardians, that's $1,500 additional, and then to include students is another $1,500. So we're looking at the max $6,500 for that survey. The other thing that's in the packet there on the agenda is an item bank. They provided a bunch of suggested items. We can fine tune those, remove, add, reword, whatever we would like to use if this is what we want to do. But that's in there as well. They're just kind of waiting to hear from us on direction as to whether we want to use their survey service or go another route. So I just wanted to bring that back because that was something that you all had asked me to look into from May 20th meeting.
Great.
Thank you. I have a few questions and comments, and I will own, some of these are maybe on me, but I felt like I left our last meeting not being clear on whether or not we were doing surveys, when they were gonna happen, to who obviously is related to this information you just provided us with, and whether or not they will be anonymous, and so I hope. And then I read the newspaper article and I was like, I don't know if I left with the same, sorry Austin, impression that Austin did. But I just hope that as a board we can come together and know exactly what we're doing moving forward in our next steps. And yeah, so those are my questions I'm interested in. Are we doing them? When are we doing them? Who is doing them? And will they be anonymous or not? Second, I want to offer a sincere apology to our administrators. I think, in my opinion, our last meeting felt tense, and I hope you know that you are loved by the board. I think you're loved by it. Certainly you are loved by me. And you probably felt blindsided, attacked, and surprised. And I want to clarify that I think feedback is our professional responsibility as a district. And currently, I think myself and other members of the board are receiving feedback in informal channels. And so my desire to have surveys for feedback is so that that comes in formal systems so that we can look at it as a board and discuss it rather than what I hear out and about in the community. So I just want to clarify, you are all doing a great job. We want to hear through surveys about the great things you're doing, and we also want to identify patterns and trends in how we can improve. And I want that to be in a systematic way rather than what I hear out and about in town. So I want to stay along with that. I do think it is unprofessional that we don't have a district-wide system to give feedback to all supervisors, and I hope that we can improve that. And then I want to clarify that since our last meeting, I have had numerous individuals who work for our schools and actually spouses of people who work for our schools reach out and express how important they think it is that there is an option to give anonymous feedback. Let's see, I've just got a long list of things. With regards to your actual update, Superintendent Harris, I think some of these costs are unnecessary. I don't think we need a student survey at this point in time. I don't think we need a community survey. I could go either way on the staff survey cost. I think it could be a great one-time thing to do, and we could learn from their methods. And I really appreciated somewhere in here, they talked about they would give us actionable steps, which was discussed as a concern of what do we do next after the survey. And so I think paying this fee once so that they can role model how we collect data, how we analyze be something we do internally in the future, but I think it's worth considering this for the time being. Thank you.
Other discussion on the survey, climate survey?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Taylor. I thought I saw a finger go up.
I just kind of pretty much just wanna echo Mara's sentiments. I think that, we dearly adore our staff and especially our administrators, but feedback is important, and how do we know what we need to work on and improve? How do we know why staff are leaving if we're not necessarily getting that collective data from, surveys and exit surveys? And so I just think that I would encourage us to not always, and I had some conversations with, some of our administrators after and tried to really, ease that concern, because it's just more or less, we need to know what we need to do better as a district, as a board, as a, collectively, we're here for our students, we're here for our stakeholders, and so, we can see and perceive things one way, but it doesn't mean that that's how our staff or the community perceives it. Agree with Mara that it's been consistently something that, during campaigning and just during my time on the board, that staff and parents have brought up. And I agree that the other surveys with the students and the community are probably unnecessary right now. I'd like to just more or less see, the staff survey. I do think the, anonymous piece is important. I do think it's a little costly, and I think we could have done this an easier way, but if WSBA can give us some actionable steps, and I think if we can take that information and use it, as Mara stated, in the future, I don't think we'll necessarily need to use it. I think we're kind of overcomplicating this, and, but I understand there's a lot going on too, and so it's better not to rush things, but I would really encourage us to, move forward with this survey.
I think timing's an issue now. We've got staff that has left for the summer. I don't know how many staff members check email, respond to email, do those kind of things. Most. Mara just said she doesn't get paid to check her email. And what I heard, man, she's, yeah, don't say that, April picked that.
Mr. Chair, I realize now I'm arguing against myself, but I do think this is a really important issue, and the sooner we can complete a survey, the sooner we can complete a secondary survey and see if we are improving. And so for that reason, the timeliness seems important. If we complete a survey now, we can receive feedback quicker, we can give people time to actually work on it over the next school year, and then maybe this time next year we can be having a presentation about the growth and the improvement we've seen. And I think summer can actually be a great time for people to fill out a survey, because they're not juggling all their teaching responsibilities, and they may have time to actually give a thoughtful response if they're checking email. To clarify, I do check my work email, I just don't like doing it in the summer.
We also have social media outlets that we could put on that are webpage that staff will be doing a survey.
Peter?
Yes, responding, thank you for your insight. You also have the exit survey, correct? So if you put one out, like Mara's saying this summer, but also look at the exit survey data, I think that makes me feel better, as, because like I said before, none of us are afraid of feedback by any means. But the exit survey, separate from those that are coming back and ready to make change, if change needs to happen, I think is gonna be a lot healthier information to get. So you have the exit survey for those with some concerns.
Yep.
And then those questions can be asked of those that are coming back. So, just
Great.
friendly.
Thanks. So, what do we wanna do? How do we wanna move forward with this? What's that?
I want to talk about it.
Yeah, go for it.
So, I guess I surely understand what a survey does for us, right? And I know I put some comments out there at the last meeting that in my opinion are factual. and what I've seen over time. And I would just encourage us that if we're gonna put out surveys and try and get information, data, and those kind of things, that we actually have to be held accountable to make sure we do something with the information that's collected. Because in the past, the data has been collected, everybody's taken the surveys, and went straight to the trash can, and never got looked at again, okay? So if we're gonna do it, if we're gonna spend $6,500, right? We have to be held accountable for making sure that that stuff is collected, gathered, seen, respected, the whole thing, and go through it, because if it's not, then we're right back to what I said before, and that's they do nothing, okay? So we're responsible for making sure it does so. So that'd be my comment if we're gonna do it, so let's do it right.
Fair point.
Mr. Chair,
Eileen?
I agree with you, Mike, and I agree with Taylor and Mara's comments as well. I really think that we just need to get the ball rolling on something that's systematic and regular, and maybe not as big a deal, you know, if it occurs more frequently, and if it occurs every, you know, season, or every twice a year, or whatever. You know, I have never not been in a job where I didn't sit down at least once a year with my supervisor face to face and have that ability to both write and talk about feedback. And this is where it seems like the gap of the non-existent human resources person or department comes to haunt us a little bit. And I don't want to make the conversation bigger than it is, but we really need to have some way to make this a very regular and, as you say, like, usable form of data. But we've got to start somewhere. So, you know, I think throwing our chip in the bucket with WSBA, as, you know, Taylor and Mara said, to get things started and to get a sense of, you know, how we can roll it out might be a good thing, and then committing to doing it every year.
I was just gonna agree with what everybody's had to say, except for I don't think we need to do the community and student survey at this point. I think the staff is more important right now, and if we decide we wanna add that later, we can, but, I think getting the ball rolling on this now so that we can get it out there, and then I like the next steps, and then it would hopefully help us plan what we're gonna do and how, when we'll do it again, and how we'll use the information, like Mike said.
When is our normal board meeting in July?
Mr. Chair, the 15th of July.
Okay, so it is the regular, I was looking at budget here, never mind, yeah, it's got all of them. So I mean, at this point, we would probably not be able to do something before the 15th of July. Mike, what, I mean, I'm adrift in the wind a little bit about where to go from here and how to make this happen. Do we want to, how do you want to proceed? Do we want to all submit questions to Mike and then have Mike put it together? Do we want to just trust Mike to put one together and we can approve it on July 15th? Or present it to us and we can either add to it, subtract to it, whatever on July 15th and then get it pushed out shortly thereafter? What's your guys' thoughts?
I think the biggest question I see right now is whether we're doing this internally or whether we are choosing to use the WSBA, is the first question. And they have great questions that they recommend. I don't even know if we need to, I guess my pitch for the WSBA is that they do all the work for us. They have great questions at all, and I think that would, yes, we have to pay for it, but it would take all the work of figuring out what do we ask, how do we administrate it, all that stuff would be taken care of, and I think we can watch. I guess my suggestion would be we watch that roll out, and we take notes, and we just repeat it ourselves in future years.
My only concern with using WSBA is the last time we did it with WSBA, the quality of the questions, in my opinion, were pretty poor. So if we do that, I think we want to vet those questions and make sure that we're all comfortable with what we're actually asking. So maybe, what would you guys think about having Mike put together a WSBA, survey and having us take a look at it on the 15th, and if we're good with it, we can do it that way. The nice thing about that is if we are talking about anonymous surveys, they do a really, really good job about keeping things, strictly anonymous. If we do it the other way, usually it's the board chair that will take the feedback and then, you know, I know that I would keep it confidential, but there might be some trust issues out there, I understand that. So this is a good way to go probably, especially for, the first one, quote unquote, although it's not the first one, so.
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
I know you talked about doing it soon. My concern on that is, just from experience, over the summer, the communication drops off a bit. So we have staff that are all over, you know, some are working on ranches that have no connection, they're on vacations. If you're gonna commit to it and you want accurate results, excuse me, I would suggest, as an admin team, we thought October would be a good time, and some of the reasons for that is that we have new staff coming on too, right? So if you were to send a survey out now, you would not get the staff that have left. You have exit surveys with Mike, so you might get some idea, but it's not gonna go into the survey, and it's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna collect the data like you wanna see it. So, just from experience, usually when I'm sending stuff out in the summer, I'm not getting 100%. And that's okay, because it's summer and they're taking the time off, they're reflecting, they're refreshing for the summer. So you could do it, and you might get some of the responses back, and you could use that as well. But if you're gonna spend money on it, if you go that route, I don't think you're gonna get the bang for your buck. Why October? I think it gives us time to get settled in and gives the staff the perspective that I think you're looking for, especially new staff. And I think, let's see, about 2 months should give them a pretty accurate idea of how they're feeling at that point as well. So just my suggestion, you can do what you want, but I don't think if you send it out in the summer, you're gonna get the responses that you want, so.
Thanks, Mr. Martin.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, maybe one of the things to think about on when to give those surveys. Historically, we've given like the last day of school, and some of those things right into the school year, kind of gig. And I don't know if that was maybe not the best time or place to do that at. But what about if sometime during the year we have different work days? And we have our schedule set to work that into part of the assigned duties for the day is to complete your survey, and maybe we could do it multiple different times with the same one during the school year and see if people.
Yeah, I know, you know, in the past, we would do these surveys with the intent of having them repeated. But they always stopped at 1, right? It was N equals 1, which isn't really good, doesn't really give statistically significant results, so. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. But that does make it more important, I think, that we get the questions right up front. Because if we wanna repeat them, then we need to make sure they're gonna come out of the gate, because if you change it midstream, you start to degrade the quality of your data over time, so. So do we wanna start this next fall? Is that the thought? Start it in October?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Peter.
I won't interrupt again, I promise. This is my last one. I do agree with Mike on that, because I run those vertical PD days, and we survey those days each time we do them. We can add the questions to that, and, you know, we have a PD day in October, we have one in January, so. And then you have the exit at the end of the year, there's 3 chances for feedback.
Great.
Thank you. Just to say, if we're being intentional, then let's get the questions going now, and then we can decide on dates after we have it.
Okay.
And now everybody has time to review it, everybody has that, and then we can even put it
thumbs up, I have a thumbs up for you.
That's a good thing.
Okay, does that work? So Mike, can we get on the 15th, the start of our questions? And then we'll
Mr.
go
Chair,
from the
absolutely. I just would appreciate between now and the next meeting, if you have specific items that aren't reflected in the WSBA items, to send them to me, so I don't waste your time with just repeating what's in here and whatever's in my head. Or if there's something you wanna see, just let me know.
Sounds good. All right, thank you. I think that's it on the, oh, maybe you're not superintendent, we're still on superintendent's report.
Mr. Chair, I'm done. That was my third item.
Just a shout out, I didn't get a chance to do this. Taylor, thank you for taking over for my duties on the graduation. I know the paper didn't quite pick it up that way, but thank you anyway. All right, so we can move into, we have a executive session. Hopefully it won't be too long. Eileen and Taylor, I'll give you a call. Bring the Board of Trustees back into order.
Second?
Discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, we have a couple of action items here. Need to get a motion for the approval of the personnel actions list. As presented.
May I make a motion to split the,
We're just working on A1 right now and not A2.
okay.
So
So,
just the personnel action list.
but the two
Yeah.
lists, so can we split the two lists? Okay.
So,
Okay, second. Second. All right, all those in favor of A1, signify by saying aye. Aye.
What, aye.
Okay,
Yeah.
any opposed?
I can't see the screen.
No one is opposed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, motion carries. And I'd like to get a motion to table A2.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a salary correction that we need to make that was missed, when we did the original steps, so I'd like to get a motion for the approval of the salary correction as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Got a second? Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Need to get a motion for the request for use of depreciation reserve account funds to purchase lunch tables at Lander Middle School.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Let the record show that, Mr. Morgan's on his knees begging at this point. Any discussion on this, Mike or Mr. Morgan?
I can share something I've observed about these tables, so that right now, the current tables have chairs that are required to be put out and taken, put away, put out, put away, put out, and put in 3 grade levels, breakfast and lunch. That's an awful lot of moving and cleaning, and extra work and noise in the commons area. Not to mention just, it's a little more chaotic with furniture moving around. Mr. Martin, have additional insight into that?
Can't hear you.
Oh.
I've done 4 years of lunch duty.
Understood.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, above everything, it's pretty hard to see Mr. Mowry putting those away each day. And there were stretches where he was the only custodian on duty. So you're looking at about 130 chairs a day. Sometimes we would employ our 8th grade detention students. And actually, it was a reverse effect. They loved it. But for him, it's a lot of work. They wax the floors every year. It looks terrible by the end of the school year because it's destroyed all the work that they've done in the summertime and over Christmas. The tables are getting harder. These are the original tables and chairs of the school building. And so the mechanics of the tables are getting harder for him and others to actually get hooked tables are wearing, the sound is ridiculous, and, just, Pat figured it would probably take off about an hour of work each day with the one unit where it all folds up together. The students or adults, it doesn't matter who's using the chairs and tables, just folds up one unit, there's no stacking of the chairs, there's no grading on the concrete floor each day, and they're just wearing out. And so that's adding to the time that Pat has putting the tables away. It's not a smooth process as it used to be, even 5 years ago. So, we are humbly asking if we could purchase these tables. In Pat's words, and I think for us, it's a game changer for us. So, little things like that help a lot.
Great, thank you. Note that it is, the cost of this is $49,483.94. It would come out of our depreciation refund, reserve account, and currently there's a balance in that account of approximately $2.7 million. So it's a fairly small request for this account. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Carol, I'll let you know if there's any.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, and then we have a request for the approval of out-of-state travel reimbursement. Let me get this here, just a second. So to get it on the table, I need to get a motion for the approval of the reimbursement for out-of-state travel.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Taylor.
Hi, sorry, thank you. I have, a couple questions about this. Trying to recall from my time on the board, I don't think we've ever approved anything like this before, and so I just was trying to get some clarification if this is common, if there's a policy on this. You know, a lot of times I see students before an event, you know, if it was asked beforehand, if this was an option instead of a post-event request. You know, are these kind of things chatted with the families about? If we could just talk about this a little bit more, I'm kind of struggling on understanding why this has been brought to us.
Mike, do you want to give a quick overview?
You bet, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We do have a policy on the books, it's policy JQ, that deals with out-of-state or out-of-season activity requests. There's a stipulation in there where, the board can be approached for expenses for national travel, so the board can approve those expenses. This instance is a little bit unique. We used to have a lot of kids competing in the State History Day competition. This year, far fewer, and 2 that made the finals and actually won the event. So they were able to go to National History Day. Due to the timing and sponsorship and some confusion at the end of the year, that request didn't come to us before the travel, which was the 9th through the 12th of this month. So they are relying on that stipulation in the policy to request reimbursement for part of the expenses that these 2 students incurred in traveling to National History Day. In the past, the district would cover that sort of thing through fundraising, but with so few students participating, there hasn't been a big LMS History Day drive to raise funds. Parents were under the understanding that there was some remaining funds in a previous fundraising account for National History Day, and that is not the case. After checking with Mr. Sweeney, there is no special activity fund that was thanks to a car wash or any other form of fundraising, so. Sorry.
I'm
A
gonna,
little distracted there. Taylor went dark on the screen.
yeah, Taylor's on the line. The power just went out in the motel that she's in.
Yeah, we're in an Airbnb, but apparently there's big lightning and thunder and the power just went out, so.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that, guys.
If you hear sirens, head for the basement.
Yeah, no kidding.
I guess, just to sum up on that, so the total costs are on the attachment there in the board packet, a little over $3,000 for student A and a little over $4,000 for student B. They flew out of different airports and had other arrangements on the ground and things, so that there was a difference. The 2 parents are just just requesting $1,000 each, so a total of $2,000 to the district to offset those out-of-pocket costs. They're not asking for the full amount, they're just asking if the district would, under policy JQ, considering reimbursing them for $1,000 each.
What kind of precedents does this set? Are you concerned with the precedents this could set about getting flooded with reimbursements for travel?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I guess that's a possibility. You know, I guess if you are driven enough to voluntarily create a project for a statewide competition and win that competition, and then go represent your school and your community at the national level, I think that's great. We can't always support that, and nor could we support every request or a full amount of each request, but I think these parents are attempting to be reasonable and asking for a fraction of what they've spent to get out there and accompany their own children to these events rather than having a staff member of the school district go with them. We don't see a whole lot of national events like this that students are qualifying for, so I don't think we'll be overwhelmed, but is it an unexpected expense from time to time? It could be.
So are you recommending approval?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I would recommend approval. Both of these students presented to the board at our May 20th meeting. Their project was not only the state champion, it was a winner of a pretty prestigious award at the state level. I haven't heard yet how they did at the national level. They just got home about 4 days ago, but I would be in favor of approving this request.
Other discussion on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would just throw out there that I had a daughter who went to National History Day a couple of times, and this was during the time where Gayla Hammer actually was there as a chaperone. They stayed at the University of Maryland in the dorms, so lodging was very inexpensive. They ate their meals in the dining hall. She arranged public transportation to get them to and from Washington, D.C. And the kids did do some fundraising, and families contributed, what they could. But I think it's a very different situation today, because obviously, a parent needs to accompany their student, and we know that lodging and transportation are not, unless you're at the University of Maryland, they're not that inexpensive. So this seems like a really reasonable thing, and a great way for us to continue to show our support to these students who are doing such amazing work.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the reimbursement, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion, okay, Liz Taylor is opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, I need to get, there's gonna be one extra action item that's not on the agenda. This is a personnel issue, so I will refer to the person involved as individual A. I need to get a motion for the acceptance of the request for waiver of damages according to policy GCQC. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Any discussion on this? Alright, all those that want to approve the waiver of damages, say aye. All those who do not want to approve waiver of damages, signify the same. Aye. Okay. Motion is denied. Okay, discussion items, policy review. We have first reading of four policy. The first one is policy JICHAR, drug testing for students involved in extracurricular activities. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So you'll recall from the May 20th meeting that there was a one-pager with kind of a year in review for the drug testing policy that included some possible recommendations from the admin team and myself. This draft is crafted based on that discussion from May 20th. A couple of highlights here. First, under the activity programs on the first page, this proposal would eliminate 6th grade from the testing protocol and keep 7th and 8th grade. was discussion last month about whether middle school at all should be involved, and if so, which grades. So this is sort of a compromise on that point. Then down on the bottom of page 2, this proposal would eliminate the initial 100% screening of every activity, every athlete, every participant, in favor of just keeping the random screening. And as stipulated in the original policy, 25% in season and then 10% outside of season. So those percentages are not proposed to change, but just the 100% screening would be eliminated with this draft. And then the last piece down below on page 4 is to align this policy with the code of conduct in holding that if a student is appealing a positive test result, they would be ineligible to participate while the appeal is ongoing. So that's what the code of conduct already states. This is just to make those two in agreement.
I have a quick question on that.
Sure.
Is that ineligible to participate in practice as well?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Harms, I have to look and see what the code of conduct says. I think the code of conduct stipulates that you can participate in practice, but not in contests.
Could we, for reading 2, could we make that more clear so that we should ambiguity there?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other discussion on this? Mark?
Yeah, I have a question. How much, I know funds were allocated for drug testing in the draft of the original budget. How, do you know how much was, can't speak, how much was allocated for testing and how much eliminating the 100% started season testing would save?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Gans, I don't have the specific figures on how much that component was, but that was the bulk of the expenditures, because we had 5 activity seasons and 3 at the high school, so total 8 activity seasons. And then as far as the participation surveys, we did have way more students participating this year than the previous year, so that drove the cost too. It's just kind of hard to pin down, and I'd have to double check with Mr. Sweeney to find out exactly how much he's got allocated for drug testing in the coming year. But I do have those participation numbers. That was something that Mr. Jensen had requested, and I can share those if the board's interested.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. So for 24-25 at the middle school level, in non-athletic activities, there was a net gain of 29 students over the previous year. Only 2 areas had decreases, most had gains. And then on the athletic side of things, at the middle school level, a net gain of 24 participants, and only 4 of those sports had a decline over the course of, from 23-24 to 24-25. At the high school level, non-athletic activities, there was a gain of 58 students in terms of participation, and only 5 of those, there's probably close to 20 different activities. Only 5 of those saw a decline year over year. And then in terms of athletics, net gain of 31 participants, and only 3 sports had a decline, and those were minimal declines. Only 2 students in one sport, 4 in another, and 1 in another. So overall, this doesn't seem to have affected participation. In fact, you could say that there was a correlation that it may have improved it.
How did that, trying to think about how that relates to the total number of athletes or total number of potential participants. Basically, since it's 1 year, we're only talking about 1 class dropping off and 1 class being eligible, so it doesn't seem like the eligibility would change dramatically.
Mr. Chair, no, I don't think the eligibility would have changed, and the enrollment at LVHS was fairly stable year over year. LMS saw a slight decrease in students, but those gains, I think, are still meaningful.
Thank you. Mark?
Mr. Chair, Superintendent, I just wanna say I am in full support of the removal of 100% testing. I think that is a great way to save money and a great way to keep students in classes, and will make it way more logistically easy, and then the random testing still provides a strong incentive to not use drugs. I'm not a fan of the 7th and 8th grader testing, but I can live with that compromise. And then I would finally encourage us to think more holistically about how we reduce drug use and see if we can reallocate some of the money for drug testing towards activities that will engage students in meaningful extracurricular activities so that they develop hobbies outside of drug use.
vampire up there. She's sitting in the dark at this point.
Crazy, so loud, yeah, it's insane. I logged into my phone internet and I've got phones, so, yeah, I think that sounds like a great compromise and I'd like us to proceed that way as well. Thank you, flashlight for my kid. And yes, I agree, you know, I think dropping off the sixth grade, especially because most of our sixth graders are doing individual sports, they can't, or all, they can't do team sports, it just makes sense to just look at, excluding them, and yeah, I think this.
Great, thank you.
I
All right.
have one quick question
Oh,
for
Eileen.
Mike. I remember there being, some kind of complaint, possibly from a parent about, removal from the random testing list. Am I thinking of the right thing here? There had been a complaint. I'm trying to find the item.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Brewer, I think there was a comment from our former AD about that there were two parts of this policy that were at odds, and I didn't hit on it when I did my quick overview. But I think we got that straightened out. Let me just look here to see what was crossed out.
Okay, no, it must have been something else, because I know there was the question about bringing it into alignment with the student code of conduct, but I thought there was a parental question about removal of a student from the random testing list, but this item E looks pretty clear, so I must be mistaken. Thank you.
No, I don't think you're mistaken. I remember that, I mean, something about it. I think it had something to do with being removed when you're not playing in season. But I don't remember the context at this point.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Brewer, I can't remember the context either exactly. I have to go back and review the minutes.
Okay. Well, might be something to review for second reading. Okay, let's move on to policy INJ, first reading. This is our homeschooling policy. We've made some changes that I believe are driven by state statute, I think. But we'll, let Mike take it away on this.
Mr. Chair, yes, thank you. This policy is being revised. It was just revised last year, so it may look familiar. But we've had some important changes at the state level, and that's the reason for this revision. INJ basically now says that it eliminates the part of the policy that used to be talking about homeschool parents producing evidence of what curriculum they're using and giving that to the school district. That was expressly removed from state statute, so that whole part has been scratched. And there's some new language there that also matches up with that state statute. Saying that we don't, but this old language is we don't have any right to require or make judgment about a homeschool curriculum.
And at the end of the day, even if a parent came to us and we did not feel as a district that the curriculum was up to our standards, there was nothing we could really do about that, is that correct? So I mean, this almost brings reality and aligns policy with reality, is that fair to say?
Mr. Chair, that's fair.
Any other discussion on this item? Eileen?
Yeah, one quick little thing, which is more of just a grammatical thing. In that second paragraph, the highlighted portion of the sentence, it shall be the responsibility of every person administering a home-based educational program to ensure the curriculum meets these requirements and is provided to students in the program. Is provided to students
Yes.
in the program, or is provided for students in the program?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Brewer, I added D to the word provide. It's on board docs. I just had already uploaded the policy before I caught that, but yeah, it should say provided.
Great, thank you. I like that D. Thanks.
All right, any other discussion on this one? All right, policy GCBA, certified salary schedules. Mike, let you jump in on this one.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, policy GCBA is our certified salary schedules for teachers. Previously, you'll see on the draft, we did not have any credit given to any teaching, person in a teaching position if they had, prior experience that was not teaching related. So, in the case of CTE teachers, they could be a master mechanic, or, world-class welder, or a craftsman and carpenter, and come and wanna teach school and be involved with PTSB towards certification, but the previous version of this policy gave no credit to those individuals for any sort of relevant work experience. After talking with a couple of board members and LBHS and our business manager, the proposal here in this draft would be to grant up to 10 years of credit on the schedule for each year of relevant non-teaching work experience. So 1-to-1 ratio up to 10 years. For experience beyond 10 years, the credit on the schedule would be granted at a 2-to-1 ratio. So, we can't probably sustain a 1-to-1, but Mr. Sweeney was comfortable with these ratios. And I think it would be a way to help ensure that we can recruit and retain talented CTE people who are interested in becoming teachers.
Any discussion on this? Seems to make a lot of sense to me. Are other districts doing this? Something similar?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, so we inquired, Carol made a call over to Fremont 24 and Shoshone to have a little different setup. Every district is doing something a little bit different to try to get qualified people who have actual work experience in these fields and are willing to work with young people. I didn't find any district policy that had this exact type of thing, with these ratios and things like that. But I know everybody's struggling with recruiting and retaining these folks because they generally make a lot less than they could in the open market. So it's hard to reel them in and hard to get them to stay.
Well, hopefully it gives us the edge on some of these. Taylor?
Mr. Chair, I'm really excited to see us have this at the state level, the Career and Tech Ed Board we're trying to push, and it's being seen more across the state, as Mike said, with recruitment being so difficult, and a lot of people are maybe at the end of their business career, and they like to get into education and maybe helping and, teaching on that aspect, but financially it just doesn't make sense for them, and so especially for these rural districts, this is something that they're going towards, and it's kind of a push throughout the state, so I think this is great for us, and it'll look really great for some of those recruitments, and it's not a huge pool of teachers that we're discussing, it's just more of those trades, a little bit more of those unique positions, so I think it would be not sustainable if we were talking about, a larger pool of staff that would be applying to, so that's my thought.
Great, yep. Other discussion on this item? Okay, let's move on to policy EJ, sex designated facilities. Another one that's driven by one state statute. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, so this is coming to us via the Wyoming School Boards Association. This is a verbatim model policy from their policy service. This is based on the new state statute, which is Enrolled Act 53, designating exclusive sex-specific facilities for restrooms, changing rooms, and sleeping quarters. The policy does include some reasonable accommodations for those who don't identify with either of the sex-specific definitions in the policy and in the statute. There are some exceptions for custodial staff, emergency responders, coaches, but under certain conditions only. So this is very much reflective of the policy or the state statute. And districts don't really get a whole lot of latitude to go with these, but all of us need to have a policy in place before the next school year. So that's the reason for bringing it today for first reading.
Thanks. Discussion? Mark?
Mr. Chair, Superintendent Harris, I want to first acknowledge that my duties follow the law and Wyoming statute is pretty clear on this issue. But I also want to acknowledge that not all students fit neatly into the categories described in this legislation. There are students who identify with a gender that may not match their anatomical sex. There are students who may legally have changed their sex. There are also students who are born intersex and who may have atypical presentation of their body parts that do not match the chromosomes of their sex. And so I want us to remember that this is, well, the categories in the legislation are really neat and specific. Not everyone fits in those categories, and our district and our teachers and our staff and our coaches still carry that burden of supporting those students. And so I hope we move forward thoughtfully and with love and with consideration of the needs they may have in terms of additional support. I do appreciate the language in here about reasonable accommodations, and I hope we remember that that includes not just a different room or a different bathroom, but that may include mental health counseling or having conversations with other members of the sports team so that these students feel like they belong, as all students belong in our schools. So I hope we move forward with love on that.
Great, thanks. Other discussion on this one?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Ellie?
You know, we have transgender and non-binary and gender questioning students in our school district, and we know they're here with us. And the words of this state statute don't erase them or negate their needs and rights and well-being. I think it's really important that we remember that research shows that a student's inability to easily use the bathroom that corresponds to their gender identity has actually increased in schools and areas across the country. Incidents of verbal, sexual, and physical harassment. And in light of this knowledge, we as individuals and educators, administrators, and school leadership teams must commit to going beyond the wording of reasonable accommodation for our transgender, non-binary, and gender questioning students to ensure their well-being and their safety in our schools as we implement these policies. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellie. Any other discussion?
I would just like to say that I agree with Mara and Eileen that we move forward with respect for students, and I hope we keep that as our focus, as well as the questioning. I mean, I don't know who's gonna man this exactly, like, how is that really gonna be, you know, I hope it's done in a respectful way if somebody's concerned about somebody's gender, because there's been assaults happening for females who look a little bit more masculine and men who look a little bit more feminine. They're getting attacked and getting, like Eileen said, they're getting attacked and harassed and when they go and choose the bathroom that is their gender. So I'm hoping we continue to be respectful, specifically in our public in our swim pool, where we have people from all over the community using it. So I'm hoping that we continue to be respectful and thoughtful with this.
Great, thanks. Taylor, Mike? Mike shakes his head. Taylor?
Mr. Chair, I think those were valid points, and I think, you know, again, following the letter of the law, I don't have anything else to add on this, so appreciate the input from everybody.
One thing that I mentioned, just this is a little bit broader, but 2 years ago we went and we were talking about transgender policy that I had brought forward. I think it was 2 years ago. I'm happy that at this point, I think almost all the issues have been addressed. I don't think we any longer need to have such a policy. This Enrolled Act, Wyoming State 21-3-137 takes care of the bathroom accommodations for the safety of, primarily safety of, in my mind, our female students, so I'm thrilled with that. Our pronouns issues have been addressed with Enrolled Act 23, Wyoming State 914-601, which specifically addresses adults, but as students generally have more flexibility in First Amendment rights than teaching staff, I think this pretty well covers students as well. Sports was addressed via Enrolled Act 92, Wyoming State 21-25-102, so we no longer have to worry about the safety of our girls in competitive sports where they're playing against males. Parental rights and notification was addressed with SF9 and policy KBB, even though I think that transgender issues are not explicitly called out, in that policy. I certainly think that issues surrounding gender dysphoria constitutes mental health conditions and qualifies under KBB. And then IND teaching controversial issues, Executive Order 14109, President Trump prohibits K-12 schools from teaching content related to gender ideology or critical race theory. So it's pretty clear that the piece of our transgender policy that dealt with IND has already been dealt with by this administration. So the only thing I think in the original policy that was not addressed was name and gender changes on official records. But I'm not nearly as worried about those items as some of the others in that transgender policy. So I think pretty much all the material issues have already been addressed by either state statute or by federal regulations. So pretty pleased that that's all sewn up, at least for what we were trying to accomplish earlier. Any other discussion on EJ? Hearing none, then move on to discussion B, consideration of becoming an education service provider, ESP. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So you may, in a couple of superintendent's reports, I've mentioned the Education Savings Account, aka that's part of the Steamboat Legacy Act that passed the state legislature this past session. The way that program works is the state allocates money, $7,000 per child, not from the school foundation account, but from another account, so it's not affecting public school funding. $7,000 per homeschool or private school student for each enrolled student in the program. And those parents who enroll in the program, their accounts are credited for $7,000 per year, and that's just distributed on a quarterly basis for the parents of the kids in the program. Once the parents are in the program, they are able to go online to a website that's run by a company called Odyssey, and they select from a menu of services which services they want for their child. And then there's a cost associated with each of those services, so they're basically ordering what they want. The money from the Education Savings Account program doesn't go directly to the parents, it's paid to the education service provider who's providing the services. Now, public school districts are eligible to become education service providers, or ESPs, under the statute. This memo, after a lot of discussion with the state, with other superintendents, and with our admin team, this memo is recommending that Fremont One hold off on becoming an education service provider, at least until we have more information and experience with how this works in practice with other school districts. The memo kind of outlines some of the concerns, some of the information that we have not yet been able to answer, the questions that we have from the state. They did issue a 4-question FAQ, I think yesterday or perhaps Friday, I can't remember which day I saw it. But we still have a lot of questions about state reporting, grading, discipline, attendance. If we are an education service provider, how do we handle those major issues if a student is coming to our classes but is not an enrolled student in the school district? The financial piece is another consideration. The state guidance is that districts would need to, if they're gonna be an education service provider, enter into contracts. Negotiation is what the FAQ said earlier, a couple days ago. So contract with parents for these services and then figure out on the back end how to get the money from Odyssey and from the state. So there's just a lot of confusion on how much that would be, what are the reporting requirements, what is the process. Our feeling is that it may not be insurmountable, but it is gonna be darn near insurmountable to have ready to go for this fall. So our approach would be to wait and see, and then reevaluate the decision further down the road as we get more from WD and from other districts who are involved. And as of right now, I was only able to identify 2 districts in Wyoming that are considering becoming an education service provider. One has a pretty robust pre-K program, and there's a different set of funding and requirements for preschool, and then another one operates an online school. So they're used to doing virtual arrangements with students and things like that, so a little more unconventional than what we've had here in Fremont One. So wanted to put that out there and then just hear your thoughts as board members on that recommendation and any other questions that you'd like me to answer or gather info on.
Any thoughts on becoming an ESP? Not yet. Seems like, I mean, even if we wanted to do this, we have, what, 2 months to get it in place before we actually need to start implementing. It's not much time.
Mr. Chair, I would add too that Mr. Sweeney contacted the state for information on how to become an ESP a couple months ago. And we still are waiting. We got in response a link to the Odyssey website, but we're able to answer any of the questions on topics that I brought up a second ago.
Let someone else be on the bleeding edge of this one though. Taylor, Eileen?
Mr. Chair, I had just thought that the original, or the Enrolled Act 52 stated that, you know, the Steamboat Legacy funds could be used for any non-governmental entity school. It's like, doesn't seem like we fit that definition in any way. So I was really surprised to see this, you know, on the agenda last week, because I thought that we are the governmental entity.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Brew, that is part of the discussion that's happening around the state. I think there's some confusion among districts as to whether the state's guidance and interpretation of this statute is really what a court would uphold. So there's like a couple of different bills that come out every year, some question about what it actually means in practice. Right now, they're saying districts are eligible to become ESPs, not many are biting, so we'll see how it plays out, I suppose.
Anything else on this one?
Taylor, maybe we're saying?
Oh, Taylor?
Thank you. I agree, let's hold off. There's so many unknowns, and like everyone's reiterated, there's the practical, you know, this trickle down effect when we have legislation like this put in of how it's being implemented, who's gonna oversee it. You know, I just think there's too many. I support our homeschool community, and I'm happy for them with this, but I think we should wait on getting involved with it just to make sure we have some more understanding of the requirements for testing and, you know, credits and all of that stuff. It seems to be a lot of confusion and unknowns.
Great, thanks. Okay, let's move on to salary and comp targets. I have a suggestion. Scott was the one that originally brought this up, and he was sort of driving this. He's not here tonight. Would it be a problem if we table this until next time?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I don't think so. I'm prepared to speak on it, but Scott was the one who brought it forward, so I'm fine waiting.
And we had talked about this, so we didn't hear.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Is that all right with everyone? We can table that one? Okay. All right, so we'll table that till next time. All right, upcoming events and reminders. June 24th, the public hearing for proposed intent to amend the rules for employees who conceal carry firearms. 6 p.m. here. Keep in mind that this will be a listening session only. There will be very little board well, there will be no board business that takes place other than the listening session. July 15th, the budget hearing starts at 6, which is a statutory required budget hearing, and then the regular meeting will follow that immediately. The budget hearings usually don't take much time at all. And then July 29th, there will be a special board meeting to consider taking action to amend the rules and regulations for the concealed carry of firearms at 6 p.m. That basically is the follow-up from June 24th, and that was the statutorily required 45-day period that we needed to wait